In 2016, a room of scientists gasped while watching a video of a comb jelly. Known to science as Ctenophora, comb jellies are translucent, gelatinous creatures of the sea. And they're so ancient that they're probably the oldest animal lineage out there. They were likely drifting around the world's oceans by at least 600 million years ago. And researchers have studied the ins and outs of comb jellies for centuries, literally. Like other animals with ancient roots, from sponges to anemones, they were long thought to use just one hole to eat and poop. Their gut was thought to be like a cul-de-sac, where food goes in, gets digested, and then is shot back out. But the video showed fish that had been gene-edited to glow in the dark, moving through the jelly's digestive system. And once the jelly was done breaking down its luminous food, 2 holes in its bottom suddenly appeared, and it pooped out of a pair of mysterious holes. Now, while watching a see-through jelly poop might not strike you as that exciting, it upended much of what scientists thought they knew about how and when animals evolved anuses in the first place. And it turns out that while the evolution of the butthole was a major breakthrough in animal development, its story might actually end with redefining what it means to have a butthole at all.
We wanted to let you know about our new ammonite and trilobite fridge magnets, just in time for magnet giving season. The ammonite was 3D scanned from a Cretaceous fossil about 145 to 66 million years old, found in Madagascar. And the trilobite was modeled after a 390 million year old Ordovician fossil found in Morocco, who is the cutest. Look at this. You can find these magnets and our other merch at the link in the description, or head over to complexly.store.
Now, there are a couple different ways that animals can eat food and then excrete it. And a butthole, an opening at the end of the digestive tract where waste is pushed out of the body, is only one of those ways. Some creatures completely lack digestive tracts, like adult giant tube worms at the bottom of the ocean, who get their nutrients from bacteria living inside their bodies. But most ancient and simple organisms, those that originated over 500 million years ago, like jellyfish, sea anemones, and some flatworms, have sac-like digestive systems with literal potty mouths. Stuff comes out the same way it came in, from the same hole. Now, this simple plan can have some disadvantages. Like, every meal needs to be completely digested before new food can come in, so it's pretty limiting if you need a lot of energy to grow, develop, and do stuff. And since these sacs have dead ends, they can't really have different segments and compartments doing slightly different jobs, which means they miss out on the benefits of having different microbes and enzymes breaking down different components of the meal at the same time. Later in the evolutionary history of animals, it's thought some creatures solved this problem by evolving through guts, which are more tube-like digestive systems where nutrients come in one way and go out another way. Ta-da! The birth of the butthole. This, it's long been thought, was a necessary step towards animals becoming more complex, because they could eat more without waiting to have digested everything else. Now, exactly when and how this happened is a mystery scientists are still trying to solve. The first attempt to explain the through gut came in the late 1800s, when a German zoologist applied his theory of recapitulation to the problem. Recapitulation was the idea that you could tell how animals had evolved by watching how they developed through their embryonic stages. But no one could replicate his drawings of embryos. Later, in another attempt to explain how anuses evolved, scientists started using the velvet worm as a template. This led them to claim that anuses originated from the same opening as the mouth. See, in velvet worms, the embryo is a spherical blob that develops a first hole in the middle called a blastopore, although not everybody agrees it's a true blastopore. Over time, the circular-like organism becomes more elongated, and the blastopore becomes more furrow-like. The furrow slowly starts to divide its labor, sucking water and microscopic nutrients in from one side and then spitting them out the other. Eventually, this groove pinches in the middle to create 2 separate holes. And as the holes drift farther and farther apart, the sac-like gut folds inside where the pinch is and slowly turns into a tube. This tube then is the through gut. Maybe this journey that velvet worms go on as they develop shows us how the evolutionary process of the anus unfolded, and this became the longest standing hypothesis about anuses. According to this school of thought, the first anuses appeared in this manner sometime between 600 and 540 million years ago, before animals became more sophisticated bilaterians, with a right side, left side, bottom, and top. And in 1908, an Austrian zoologist studying the embryonic development of other animals noticed that they didn't go through the same journey as the velvet worm. Instead of becoming a groove that formed two holes, the blastopore hole stayed a single hole through embryonic development. And in some animals, that hole develops into a mouth. In others, the same hole develops into an anus. Then the hole grows into a tube that becomes elongated through the body until it meets the other side, forming an anus or a mouth, respectively. According to this theory, the butthole is basically the bottom of the gut that slowly poked its way out of the body. And scientists actually started using this process to categorize animals into two different groups. When the blastopore first forms the mouth, the animal is a protostome, meaning first mouth. Starfish are protostomes, for example. And when the blastopore becomes the anus first, the animal is a deuterostome, a second mouth. Earthworms are deuterostomes, and so are we. This school of thought suggested that the butthole was basically just turned on during evolution when organisms evolved in directions where a butthole would be helpful to their success, and that it could sometimes be lost again when it's not helpful anymore. If buttholes can break out of the body during the evolution of an animal to fit its lifestyle and not through the complicated tubing of a single hole, this helps explain anomalies that the theory of recapitulation couldn't explain. Like, for example, the marine worm Ramesillus multicaudata evolved a branched gut with hundreds of different buttholes along its entire body, likely because that's what worked for its life strategy. Or the acial flatworm, which doesn't have an anus at all, even though some of its ancestors did. Building off of this, a slew of scientists came up with new ideas for how exactly the breakthrough happened. In the 1940s, for instance, one German scientist theorized that the digestive system poked its way out of the body by connecting to the genital opening, which was already there as another hole before the anus. While another Austrian zoologist suggested animals first had a sac-like gut they stored their ovaries in, too, and the through gut developed together with the genital tract when the ovaries started getting more complex. Hypotheses that bring the genital cavity into the picture help us understand why birds and reptiles today have cloacas, not exactly buttholes, but instead one hole for reproducing and excreting waste. So this growing body of research has built on top of itself throughout the decades, sometimes dismantling or upsetting older ideas. And there are still some big unanswered questions that keep researchers on the fence, like, is it one hole splitting into two, or one hole that poked out after the other? But most hypotheses tend to agree on a similar trend. In all of these ideas, the scientists have painted a linear, progressive picture of increasing complexity. Animals were simple, with sac-like guts, and then they evolved through guts when they became more complex and sophisticated. And that's why that 2016 video of the comb jelly pooping was so shocking. It completely upends this picture. Because these seemingly simple animals apparently didn't have the seemingly simple gut that scientists had assumed simple animals had. This initial bias is probably why it was so hard to find those anuses on comb jellies, even though they've been studied for so long. Back in 1850, a biologist had even speculated the jellies probably had a through gut, but because he never really observed any excrement coming from anus-like pores, his idea quickly fell flat. So when scientists saw that their comb jellies were expelling waste from the same hole the food had entered their body, they assumed it was the way their digestive system worked. But it turns out the jellies were probably just puking this whole time. Maybe because they were fed too much during the experiments or fed something they didn't like. They hadn't been pooping at all. If one of the most ancient organisms on the planet already had a through gut, this invalidates the core belief that the butthole evolved when organisms started getting bigger and more sophisticated. or even that buttholes allowed for animals to start to grow and develop and diversify so much. See, back when scientists began asking questions about the anus, they were assuming that evolution was about progress, and that complex was just better. But maybe through-guts were instead the most simple solution for the digestive system to start off as. And maybe we need to rethink what we assume is simple and what is complex in the evolution of life. Once we rethink these categories, new possibilities emerge. Like maybe ancient sea anemones and jellyfish initially already had through-guts with bumholes, but closed them up over time because they weren't all that useful to their success. Or maybe buttholes evolved independently in unique ways at different times throughout history, and maybe there are some radically different ways to be a butthole. After all, if some animals evolved their mouth and butthole at the same time, some evolved mouths first and others evolved buttholes first, some animals have 2 buttholes and others have hundreds, what exactly is a butthole? We just don't know yet which hypothesis is correct, with some scientists maintaining aspects of the original soul hole concept probably ring true, while others favor other ideas. It's hard to track this down through prehistory because there aren't many fossils to work from. Jellies don't exactly fossilize well. And up to the modern day, we didn't really have the technology to fill some of these holes in our knowledge. It's only now that scientists can study the cells and molecules that make up these different holes in different animals that we can start to figure out what buttholes are molecularly and what cells they came from. For instance, scientists don't yet know whether comb jellies activate the same genes other animals do when growing an anus. Maybe they're triggering something completely different with no affinity to what we now call a butthole. Maybe it's something completely different and new, butthole 2.0. But what we do know is that evolution is about finding solutions that work for all different animals with all their different lifestyles, not about following a linear path from sac to tube and from simple to complex. And with modern advancements in technology and maybe a few more blind ends, the next decade of research will hopefully get to the bottom of this.
Okay, listen up, because we want to hear your feedback. Every year, PBS Digital Studios sends out an audience survey, which we use to help understand what you enjoy on YouTube and what you want to see us make more of. You also get to vote on new show ideas, so it'd be great if Eons fans were well represented in the polls. There's a link in the description. Thanks in advance.
At a site in South America, at least 22 giant ground sloths met their end. One of the hypotheses that researchers proposed for what killed the sloths has to do with their butts. Find out more in our episode, Did These Giant Ground Sloths Poop Themselves to Death? And we can't leave behind this month's Eontologists. Addie, Annie and Eric Higgins, Carl Wolfel, Juan M., Melanie Lamb Carnevale, Nico Robin, and Raphael Hassa. By becoming an Eonite at patreon.com/eons, you can get fun perks like access to a monthly digital puzzle of Eons commissioned paleo art. And as always, thank you for joining me in the Ken Barnes studio. Subscribe at youtube.com/eons for more fantastic fossils. And maybe there are some radically different ways to be a butthole. Oh my God. Man, that's really hard to keep a straight face.
Great job. Good job.
Oh, maybe I won't be on screen for that. I said butthole or buttholes 21 times. Oh, no, 23 times in this episode. That has to be some kind of record, right?